This is guitarist Denis Taaffe, and I'm in my home studio, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Bargain Bin Gear. And in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Podgo from line 6 modeling pedal board. Okay, and basically the Podgo shares a lot of amp modeling and cabinets and effects from the Helix line, right? Their flagship Helix modeler, as well as some more vintage effects from, for example, from the M series, their effects and so on. And we'll go into that here in a little bit. And basically, this is from I don't actually own this unit. It's a friend of mine from Indianapolis who recently got into modeling and tried out the Podgo, the head rush, and so on and so on and so on. So he loaned me this for review and to see what I thought of it and that kind of thing. Now, I have quite a history with line 6 because for years I had the Pod XT Live. In fact, I still have it, I think. And in fact, I recorded probably about 200 albums with it. And I would just run it into the front of 2 solid-state amps, not even going direct. And it was a lot of fun, and it worked for me for a while, you know, until I switched to tube amps. And then it was kind of like, I don't know, that sounds quite right to me. So, I guess before we get into the unit, you know, we need to discuss the price and if it's worth it for what you get. You know, now, in fact, the price is still on here from Guitar Center, the price tag. Holy smokes. $450. I'm sorry, $449. Can you believe that? Man, that sounds like a lot of money. It makes me suspicious. You know, but when you compare that to something like a Helix, you know, which is well over $1,000, you know, then it's like, oh, well, maybe it's not that expensive. I mean, let's face the facts. This kind of technology is very, very expensive. You know, I mean, people are spending quite a bit of money on this. So, now, again, we're going to have a, you know, a facsimile of an unboxing. Unfortunately, because, you know, it's my friend's and he's already opened it, right? It's not really an official unboxing, as if it had been new from the factory. So we'll do that here shortly, you know. In fact, we'll do it right now. Here you go. Drum roll, please. And please, again, you know, don't attempt this at home unless you're a trained professional. Okay, so here it is. Look at that nice box. Wow. You know, and you would think that this graphic here is, well, you know, kind of looks like that. But no, that really is what it looks like. And that's one thing I should mention. The screen that you see here, it really looks like that. I mean, it's quite, I have to say I was quite impressed with the screen. But here we go. We are going to open this box. I guess I should turn it around. Here we go. Official, or almost official, unboxing. Here we go. Oh my. Wow! Okay. So basically, AC adapter is kind of like a wall wart, you know, and basically, from what I recall, all the pods, including the Pod XT Live, you know, had wall warts. And here's the actual unit. Here we go. Now, I haven't removed the, you know, the plastic off the screen, you know, and I'll leave the, you know, the owner of the unit to do that. I thought it was very nice of him to let me try it. Now, one thing he's done is on these foot switches, he's added these plastic, I don't know, pod, what do they call them, switch covers or something, you know. I guess it's supposed to make it easier to hit the switches. And cosmetically, it looks nice. You know, I don't know. I don't think it's that big a deal. Now, this has a refined pedal from the good old Pod XT Live days, which had a really cruddy pedal. It was a lot more refined, I felt. You know. Now, it's very much simplified here. Even from the HX Effects, which is kind of an effects-only version. This has amp modeling and cabinet modeling. It has a mono effects loop right here. You can attach an expression pedal to it. It has USB for direct in-line recording. And for my purposes, and I think this may set this review apart from some of the other reviews, you know, most people are using this, you know, to go direct right into their recording interface, you know, but we're not going to do that. I know, please don't be shocked, but in fact, what I'd rather do is connect it as I did years ago, the Pod XT Live, and that was direct into an amp. And how does that sound? You know? I'll tell you the results later, because I've actually been working that. Now, real quick, and I hope Line 6 is watching, because I think they've done the the podgo pedal a real disservice. And that is, just from playing around with it and things, what I discovered is, one, the presets are the most basic presets you could ever complete. So generic, it's hard to believe. And gives the podgo a really bad name, if you want. Because what I discovered is that it's actually a really powerful unit, you know. But you'd never guess that from the presets, you know. I mean, I don't know if they just had, you know, somebody on their lunch break, here you go, here's the podgo, just make a couple presets just to get it out of the door or something. Totally neglected, and I'll tell you, they would have sold a ton more units had they put a little time into it, because it is actually quite powerful, you know, especially effects and so on, you know. And here, I mean, it's the, you know, the presets. You know, I mean, I'm not sure if they didn't have like a, you know, like an experimental, like monkey, you know, just kind of turning knobs and say, okay, preset, preset. You know, I mean, they're lousy, quite frankly. And I'm not the only one to say that. You know, just go online and read some of the reviews, you know, same deal. And it's a real shame. I think a real missed opportunity. You know, because people hear that and they go, well, podgo is kind of generic, kind of, you know, weak. But that's not the case at all. It's just they didn't take any time at all. I mean, nothing. For experimentation of the presets. It's capable of some really unusual sounds. You would never know. Never guess. You know, so please don't go by the presets of what this little unit can do. Okay. And I remember when it first came out, I remember thinking, oh, well, now wait a minute, this doesn't have any MIDI. MIDI! You know? And I understand why it doesn't have MIDI, is because, you know, it's supposed to be, you know, just a pedal board, right? So you don't need the MIDI, right? It's all your effects and everything are here, you know. But the one thing is, if you want to use this with a bigger, you know, setup or other pedals and things, and you want to sync this thing to MIDI, no can do, which is okay. I mean, I don't think most people would do that. Okay, here's the other thing. I guess I can discuss it now, and that is, if you are, you know, I'm going to run it into two little tube amps, and I love the sound of the tube amps. And I was hoping to kind of cheat, right, and use some of the amp models in addition to just the sound of the tube amp, right into the tube amps. And that's what I used to do with the Pod XT Live. Well, what I discovered is that, well, it just didn't bring much to the tube sound, you know. It didn't really make all that big a difference, quite frankly. In fact, it kind of didn't sound quite right. Now, that's on the clean sounds, okay? One thing that did work a lot better than I expected is, if you're going to do that kind of thing, is messing with the EQ. And on this thing, there are tons of little EQ pedals, you know, that you can change. And that did make a big difference. And then you could kind of use the models as well. You know, and now I know people say, well, you're supposed to go direct and use FR and blah, 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 blah. Fine. I understand that. Right? But since I like the amp sounds that I have and I don't want to go direct, I wanted to see if I could just use them, you know, straight into the amp. And I found that this worked a lot better on high gain and distortion type sounds, okay, than the clean. You know, and I guess it's kind of biased because I'm already running in a tube amp where I like the clean sound. So I didn't feel that helped at all, really. On the other hand, just like the Pod XT Live, even though I was running in an amp model of, you know, whatever amp, high gain amp, you can run that into the clean channel and it sounds pretty good. You know, now is it a direct, you know, impression of the amp that you're modeling? No. Okay, and of course if you went direct or into a FR cab type thing, you know, it would sound more so. You know, but still give you a very good sound. Okay, so that's the first thing. And so for me, a lot of times on the clean channel, I would just turn off the modeling, right, and the cabinet simulations, right? I found that was much more successful in the, high gain type sounds, So once I turned off, and this is on the clean channel only, I'm not talking a high gain here, just on the clean channel, get a nice clean sound. Turn off the amp modeling and the effects, right? Or I'm sorry, the cabinet simulation. That leaves you with the effects, okay? And I think this is where Line 6 really dropped the ball, as I said. Once I started playing with the effects, I realized, oh, wait a minute. These look kind of familiar, and not only do they look familiar or sound familiar, they sound very, very good, and it's actually a very powerful unit. And from the presets, you'd never guess that, Quite surprising. So, once you turn off the amp modeling and the amp sims, what are you left with, really? Well, I'll tell you what you're left with. A lot of sounds, both from the Helix and the vintage series, the M series, like the M5, the M9, the M13. In fact, I use the M5 all the time. I love that little pedal, And basically, it's a pedal and only does one sound at once. But it has 100 and so variations of different kinds of sounds. Well, same thing here, except that you have 3 or 4. So it's the equivalent of 3 or 4 of those little M5. In other words, you can use 3 delays, and mix them together into one sound, or 2 delays and a reverb, or even 3 reverbs if you wanted to. Very easily, if not more than that, So, in that sense, and I mean, it's very similar to the HX effects, right? Except the HX effects, has dual pass and up to 9 effects at once and that kind of thing. I think this has only like 4 or something. So it's a little less and it's only one path, However, the effects were very, very nice and very similar to the Line 6 M5 and also to the Helix. For example, I think they call it the Elephant Man delay or something, which is a Helix delay. It's in here as well. And the bass synthesizer sound, I use that all the time on the M5 to emulate bass. It's also in there, And in fact, I mean, they're not just similar, they're the same. You have the same, you turn these knobs to adjust the settings within the effect you're going for, But what is much more impressive, the Line 6 M5 had a, while it had a screen that changed colors, it was a pretty crappy screen. It didn't look very good. This screen, as you'll see when I turn it on, man, it's really something else. I mean, this is definitely new technology, and the screen just looks super great. So I'm going to hook it up here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So I've got it hooked up here. If you take a look, I know it's kind of hard to see. I could zoom in and so on. But the screen is really stunning, I have to admit. Now, the way it's laid out and those kinds of things makes it really simple to use. And in fact, I was able to access everything I needed, without reading any manual or anything, just, clicking the buttons. I mean, it's quite self-explanatory, really. Okay, and besides that, now my friend at the same time purchased a head rush, and what he relayed to me is that the fact that the headrush has a screen that is touch sensitive made things a lot simpler to use. And I would agree with this. It gets a little tedious to turn the button. Once it gets used to it, you know, where you can turn this button to choose an effect, and then you use these 5 buttons to edit the sounds and that kind of thing. Okay, that did make a huge difference. So the fact that the headrush has a touchscreen does make a huge difference. And in fact, this reminds me very much of the Helix LT, you know, as far as the layout and things. And it's very functional, very usable, no problems with that. You know, would a touchscreen improve it? Of course. Make it a little simpler, you know. So let's take a listen to it. Here's kind of a cool sound, Inner Space or something like that. I took off the amp simulation. Pretty awesome reverb there. And now I took the decay down a little bit on the reverb. So now, for example, I've got 3 delays on, and you get very unusual. Uh-oh, Shababy alert. Shababy, I'm doing a video. I guess you know that. What are you gonna break now? Shababy, please. Come on. Out of the way. Shababy. Made a mess. Here, come. You can sit in the box. Alright, so anyway, so here's 3 delays. Basically get it some really unusual sounds. This is, you know, just a miscellaneous example. power delays. We have no idea what that'll give you, but pretty cool. All right. So now I'm adding a chorus to those delays. I've just changed some pedals, different ones. In fact, what am I using? I'm using a delay, modulation, and 2 reverbs. Truly bizarre. Okay, and so, you can get all kinds of bizarre sounds. Basically, what I'm trying to just demonstrate is just that it has a huge amount of effects capability, you know. And a lot of the presets were kind of for, you know, existing songs and those kinds of things. We can go through a few of those. You know, that kind of metalish. Yeah, just high-end stuff. So there you go. So basically, I guess what I was trying to point out is just that you have a really powerful effects engine there, you know? And granted, my examples, you know, my examples were basically, you know, miscellaneous. I mean, just turning on pedals. You know, but I think if you really worked at it and spent a lot of time experimenting, it'd be great for ambient players or for players looking for kind of unique sounds, that sound really good, clean-wise, or distortion-wise, I guess. Now, quite frankly, I found that the presets and things are very similar to what I used to get on the Pod XT Live. Now, the older I get, the less distortion I use, quite frankly. I kind of switch styles, so I don't really even play the distortion stuff all that much. I mean, it's fun to play, I guess. But, had I had this unit, 10 or 20 years ago, it would have been really great. And it does work direct into the amp. Less successfully on the clean, which quite frankly, often I think it's almost an afterthought. Most of the presets and things are high gain. And for high gain, it's really great, because a lot of tube amps that I had access to and played when I was younger never had enough gain. They're always missing this gain, and you can play metal on those. Forget it. Always have to add a pedal. So here, the modeling, you never have to worry about that at all. It's got gain, and it's pretty clean, And remember, none of this is direct, so that's a whole different thing that it can do. I haven't even looked into that at all. So, overall, I think that the podgo, depending on the way that you use it, can be a really powerful unit. I think I was running, 3 delays plus a modulation pedal, or even reverbs and things. So there's plenty of power. It's just programmability-wise and tweaking-wise. And, compared to tube amp and just effects, when you have the amp, and cab simulator, it's almost always this kind of, especially on clean, this kind of distant sound, and doesn't sound as good, as obviously going direct into the amp. It just doesn't. And now some of those presets, come on. I've heard presets like that, back in 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and I don't hear an improvement in some of them, On the other hand, for lead kind of stuff and high gain kind of stuff, it's actually really good at that, And the way I played for years and years was with the modeling and using a lot of gain and that kind of thing. And now think on top of that, you can go direct and, record and those kinds of things. So when you add all that together, for the price, it's pretty darn good. I do think it was kind of overlooked by Line 6 a bit. Just preset-wise, and what it's really capable of. I found that a lot of the effects were really, really interesting, especially in combination with each other. Now it would take a lot of time, to really come up with a really cool effects presets, in my opinion, But my goodness, it's got enough power to do ambient stuff or, strange sounds, unique sounds. And the quality is really good. I would say that the quality, sound-wise, is kind of like, it's not as good as something like an Eventide or Strymon or TC Electronics, quite frankly. I don't think it's quite as good sound quality-wise as those, units. And I'm generalizing here, of course. But it's, I'd say, close enough, if you're looking for the most pristine, whatever, Empress type thing, maybe this isn't the pedal for you. But, if you get at least reasonable, quality of sound, pretty close, it does that. It does it very well, pretty easy to program. I mean, you just would have to spend a lot of time for that, and for the distortion, I don't think as much time, quite frankly, because there are so many distortion presets, they obviously spend a lot of time on that part of it. Now, granted, you could do the 4-cable method and all that kind of stuff. But I was just talking about, just plug it right into the amp. You can use it for effects really well. As I said, for the clean amp, amp modelers and the cabinet simulation, you might as well just turn those off. It just doesn't sound good going through the clean channel, in my opinion. That's not the case, though, with the gain. For some reason. There, you really can use the modeling and even the cabinet simulator and get a, pretty darn decent sound. Definitely a metal type sound, and then, of course, there's a bunch of presets where you can sound like, whatever, Nirvana, or a bunch of, popular bands or what have you. So, yeah, it's a really interesting unit, and I'd say for the price, if you look at it as just an effects unit, it's well worth it for that, because they're quite powerful, and I mean, here, I hadn't even spent, 2 seconds on the presets, just turning off different combinations of pedals, then you can go in and tweak them and, really hone in the kind of sound you want. And definitely, if you're playing high gain or metal and your amp sucks, which, and I don't mean that, as any kind of, slag on most people's amps. I'm just saying that to get the kind of metal and real high gain kind of sound is an expensive proposition amp-wise, that most people who would buy this unit probably don't have access to. And this is a way of getting pretty darn close, to where you'd be satisfied playing, I mean, come on, let's face the facts. I mean, if you're, trying to top, I don't know, Metallica sounds, on your Line 6 Spider 2, this would definitely be a step up from that. Yeah. And in fact, if you have a Blues Junior tube amp or something, but you want to play some metal once in a while, or, more high gain kind of lead type of stuff, this would be perfect for that, and it can do a lot more than that. If you're willing to spend the time, to really
tweak the different pedals and see what combinations work best and that kind of thing. Now obviously you probably wouldn't be running 4 delays at once, but who knows, maybe you find a sound that you really like that way. Yeah, and I was quite surprised that, it's still very much a pod, just like the Pod XT Live was, as I remember it, And I still play it from time to time. It's a lot of fun. And I think this, I guess because the Helix and things, are much more expensive, bigger unit and that kind of thing, that the Podgo kind of gets a bad rap, But I mean, if you think about it, for the price and the power that you're getting there, there's so many different amps and effects and, that's definitely worthwhile, especially, if you're going direct. Personally, and I think in the future, that's the way we're heading for sure. Everything will be direct at some point. But for right now, anyway, going direct is another option that a lot of people are using on there. So, I think it's kind of a trade-off, For the price point, I think it's very, very good. Now obviously if you're looking for pristine effects, I think, there are obviously effects pedals that can do a little better, but they can't do any of the amp modding, especially the high gain stuff, And to me, and it's probably the wrong way of using it, but to me I always looked at these high gain amp modeling patches as kind of a different distortion pedals, really, and it just works great for that, and if you plug that into any old solid state amp even, it would sound pretty darn good. So, I realize that, people who play this, maybe they don't have tube amps that they're playing through either, they're playing through solid state. And so for that, it'd be very good too, sound quality wise. Now my friend swears by the Head Rush, but that's also a much more expensive unit. I've yet to try it, I'm not sure. I can't really comment one way or another. So this has been my experience with the Podgo, and the high gain stuff, for me anyway, it's always fun, but, it's just kind of not what I do anymore, in a way, so, but I see that it's all there. I mean, everything I used to play, and I used to spend hours, creating the preset, my signature sound, if you like, which is a good thing, and definitely with modeling, you're able to try different amps and that kind of thing, and see what works for you and things. And I think one of the things that's really great about the effects, again, is the EQs. Okay, and that's kind of unusual because, usually you'll see an EQ and it's like, pretty sad. Sometimes they don't even have EQ, they just have a global EQ. But here, if you spend time with those EQs, even on the clean sounds, even with modeling into an amp, you can get some pretty decent sounds, on there. If you're not happy with your clean sound to begin with, or You know, you're not going into a tube amp where you want that tube-like clean sound. So pretty nice unit. I mean, I think for the price, you know, when you consider, you know, some of these effects pedals are $200 each, you know. I mean, even I think my Line 6 M5 was like $100 or $150. You know, when you think you've got 4 of those, well, right there's the price of the Podgo, you know, plus all the other stuff it does, you know. And then you can assign, you know, expression pedals and so on. So in other words, but expect to spend some time with it, is what I have found, to really get the most out of it, you know. Because I found a lot of the presets were kind of generic, kind of weak, you know. And I mean, I get it, you know, it's just to show you at least what's in there that you can tweak and so on. I just wish they had spent a little more time on the experimental, kind of really cool, you know, baby. Thank you. Baby. I try to coax him out of the... Always has to make an appearance, don't you, baby? Knocking stuff over. Okay. So that's the Podgo. You know, I wouldn't say to anyone who's purchased it or plans on purchasing that it's a bad purchase. You know, and it's kind of fun, you know, obviously, to see what the capabilities are, especially of the effects things. Now, what I really enjoyed about it, quite frankly, is I wanted to know what the HX effects unit was like. Baby. And I discovered that they're very similar, in fact. So this gave me a real good idea, and it's about what I expected, you know. As I say, I have, for example, on my board, I have a Eventide, or they call it Eventide. It should be Eventide. It's just such a cool name. But Eventide is dorky. Anyway, besides the point. But I have an Eventide H9 Max pedal, which just has this, you know, super high quality sound, and but I also use a Line 6 M5, especially for filters and things, which is very similar to the Podgo. Now, it doesn't sound quite as good quality-wise, you know, especially the delays and reverbs and things, to the Eventide, but I still, you know, use it from time to time, use the delays and reverbs on the M5 as well. You know, so it's definitely usable, and you're not going to be going, oh man, these effects are terrible. You know, it's not like that at all. I mean, they're very, you know, pretty decent quality and pretty darn close, you know, to really kind of high-end audio pedals. All right, that's it. So, see you next time. Bye.